This conference will now be recorded.
With that, we will call the City of Menasha Special Common Council meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Aaron, I wonder if Haley could turn her camera on when she takes a roll or when she talks.
I'm not sure if she has that opportunity. I can talk to her after the meeting. If we could have the roll, please.
Alderman Taylor.
Alderman Taylor?
Here.
Alderman Sevenik?
Here.
Alderman Here. Alderman Schmidt? Here. Alderman Todd Gotti?
Here.
Alderman Ted Gotti?
Here.
Alderman Rapella?
Here.
Alderman Nichols?
Here.
All are present.
With that, item D is a temporary suspension of the rules. Alderman Sevenik.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'll move that we temporarily suspend the rules so that we can use our electronic devices for the Common Council meeting and along with the mayor.
Second.
Is there a second? So motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Director Schrader, did we need to go through the communication or did we want to move on to the next item?
I think we can move on. Again, we just, because it was sent out to all council members, we wanted to make sure that was publicly put out there for everybody.
Okay. Item 1 is the Fourth Amendment to the Land Purchase and Development Agreement. Director Schrader, did you want to comment, or Mr. Golden? I'm not sure how we want to go forward on this.
Yeah, maybe I can just segue in, and then if it's all right with everybody, we can have, again, Mr. Golden kind of take off and let us know where the project is at. So again, on March 15th, we had...
So Sam, before you go on,
yep.
Mayor, how come we didn't have for the public to speak on this?
Oh, I'm not sure why we didn't. Is there anyone from the public? I don't see anyone else here.
Okay.
It should have been on there. Sorry.
That works.
Okay,
sorry, Sam.
Too.
Go ahead.
I was working to get that out, so I apologize. So again, so on March 15th, the City Council did review a third amendment to the Land Purchase and Development Agreement with the Bryn LLC. There were several things that were looked at there, in addition to some environmental concerns at that time. At that time, it was known that there was some boundary sand that was needing to be removed. The Common Council did decide to kind of split that cost in half, roughly up to that $21,000. But moving beyond that, the lab results further came in later that week, and were not as positive. So again, city staff kind of has been working diligently with the developer group, with kind of staff, the DNR, environmental consultants, to try and kind of dive into as far as where we're at. So again, maybe I'll let Mr. Golden kind of with the developer group kind of take off from here and describe, what has been done since that, and then where we're moving forward and what this the Fourth Amendment kind of touches on.
Right. Thanks, council members. I apologize for having to come back and talk to you guys again about this. I was hoping we'd have our groundbreaking last week, and we got some bad news later that week. Again, really trying to drive this schedule and keep us on schedule was one of the reasons we moved forward with what we thought was worst case last time. But additional tests came back. Reason why it was the groundwater that's contaminated. And in those soil borings, it takes longer for the water to get into there. So to take the samples, it took longer. Again, we weren't expecting to find what we found. And that's why we had to come back today. So what we've done now is really figured out the worst case scenario. So if because of this site, we're really taking off everything we're excavating, we're taking off the site. What we're doing is, before we were taking it all to a clean site, what's figured in this estimate of $400,000 is all of that fill coming off the site would now go to landfill. So 3/4 of the cost, upwards of $300,000, is actually just tipping fees for the landfill. The rest is some additional trucking, some environmental testing, and all the closures and things that we have to do for the contaminated soil. So again, what we feel right now is we have the worst case scenario, since all the fill that we're taking off that site, we have figured going to a landfill. We're hoping through additional testing that has been done, that we can reduce this amount, which again would be going back half to you guys and half to us, to lower this amount that everybody's chipping in to make this project a success. With this hopefully approval today, we are looking to close. We are scheduled to close tomorrow at First American Title at 1:30. We'll be closing on both 7 Taco and 13 Main, which allows me then to get the title and deed work done so that I can close on my PACE lending and my senior lending next week, Friday. That might be delayed a little bit with the DNR stuff that we're still working through. But even with that, we're going to do our groundbreaking next week, Wednesday. I will be sending out, again, if everything goes good here, I will be sending that out yet tonight, the invitation to everybody to be there next week, Wednesday at 1:30. And then as soon as the gas is disconnected, I did send Sam a confirmation from We Energies that did say they're looking at the first full week in April to get out there and disconnect the gas to 7 Taco and 13 Main. As soon as that's disconnected, we will pull that permit and we will start demolition even before our financing is completely closed. So we are committed. We are moving forward. There just might be some delays on that financing completely closed until everybody's comfortable with the DNR information. So we are going to be working concurrently with developments with the DNR. We have had a couple conversations with them. They're fully aware of, and I think even Sam had a conversation with them. They're fully aware of what we're working with. Obviously, we're still waiting for additional details with the additional testing, but then we'll come up with the full plan. But again, what we have figured is worst case, everything going to the landfill, which will cover just about everything that could possibly be there. So we're comfortable with moving forward, and we're going to make the banks comfortable, and they'll be fine, and we'll be ready to rock. I'm certainly here for any questions as well.
Yeah, so if it's all right, I just kind of want to go through maybe specifically the text of the amendment to make sure everyone is kind of aware of that. So again, the fourth amendment was included in the packet. So there was two things. One modification to the CDI grant, just kind of a clarification of how the release of funds would work and when we would release those funds. So again, if approved, the documentation would need to be submitted from the developer to the city. The city would reimburse up to one payment, and upon substantial progress being made. So again, once substantial progress is being made, the payment, the receipts come in, the city reviews those, we submit those to WDC. WDC reviews those, submits us a payment, then we would submit that back through the Bryn LLC in one payment upon substantial progress of the project. The next one is the environmental contingency. Again, this is very much similar to what was reviewed in the third amendment. However, does clarify a few additional items. One, it does indicate kind of what we're looking at. You know, again, the contaminated soils, and part of the excavation, including testing, oversight, transportation, landfill disposal for contaminated soils, laboratory testing, regulatory documents, DNR reviews, not to exceed 200,000 and payable through the district. Again, so that's up to 200,000, or half the cost up to 200,000, not to exceed 200,000 and payable through the district. Again, the district capitalized in its fashion through the overall development agreement that is referencing the TIF 10 project plan. So that is through TIF dollars we are looking at doing that. It was kind of discussed earlier, regarding the financial stability of the TIF. So what we have is the performance incentive that was requested by this project is basically a 70% pay-go style TIF. So with that, there is still 30% increment that is created every year from the project that goes back into the TIF. So this $200,000 can still be absorbed through that additional increment that is paid. So then further on into that section, the developers again shall submit invoice and documentation of paid receipts upon completion of the cost. The city shall have 90 days to reimburse costs, but shall not be before the footings and foundations have been installed. Again, just making sure the progress is made before we're pushing out those funds. But again, timing-wise, that should be fairly comfortable. The last sentence: if funds can be recouped at a later date from a third party or parties, these funds shall be dispersed equally as it relates to the overall site remediation. So again, that is just kind of clearly noting that as we work through the investigation process, if it's found that there were third parties involved, that there's payments that need to be made for legality reasons, this is just clearly stating that the city as well as the developer are in this as a partnership, and they will be equally dispersed as the funds were spent on the overall site. So all other terms in the previous amendments would remain the same. So with that, again, I'll turn it over to the mayor, and if there's any questions for myself or Mr. Golden, we're happy to answer them.
So seeing we have a few questions, we'll start out with Alderman Severnick.
Thank you, Mayor. Kip talked about the tipping fees, and I was wondering if we as a city pay a different tipping fee than a general contractor, if maybe we couldn't do that to potentially reduce the cost. And that's either for Adam or for Corey.
Looks like Corey might have a response.
Yeah, this material, typically we take our material to Outagamie County. This material will be going to Hilbert, I believe. So we wouldn't be under that same contract or that structure, Alderman Severnick.
Okay, thank you. Just looking for a way to save, maybe.
Alderman Langdon.
Thank you, Mayor. So Sam or Kip, I'm curious of where they took the sampling. Wasn't that area already dug out? I mean, I was standing in there watching them. How far down do we have to go?
Yeah, so I'll take that one, Sam. So it's in the groundwater. So as the groundwater goes up, it actually contaminates the soil. So actually, some of the soil that was put in the backfill, the clean fill that was put in, is actually now contaminated because it's in the groundwater. So as that groundwater rises and lowers, the contaminant stays in that soil. So that's where we have worst case scenario. We feel there's going to be layers on the top. As long as the DNR allows us to do that, we feel there's going to be layers on the top that are not contaminated, that can go to a clean fill site. So that's our hope, is that this is, again, if we can't, then this is the cost of it. If we can, then it should go down, and then we all the cost savings. But that is what it is. It's basically the water is contaminated as it goes into the soil. It soaks into the soil, and it makes the soil contaminated.
Alderman Rapella.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Kip, since it's the contamination is in the water, how are we ever going to get rid of it? Because it's always going to be in the water.
So again, I'm not an environmental engineer, but just from my from what I've learned in the last 2 weeks, honestly, this is the first time I've ever dealt with something like this. But from what I've heard is that we don't have to necessarily clean the water. They're gonna they will continue to monitor that water. And by us removing some of that soil, we are removing some of the contamination that's in that water. More than likely, there isn't something that is, or hopefully there's not something that's contributing to that still to this day. The major product in there is still used, but I don't think it's used around in this area. So they'll monitor as long as it stays where it is. It won't, as long as it stays the levels that it's at, there won't be anything additional. If there is, they're going to be going after that third party to figure out what's going on.
So is this a race against time to get the Bryn built before they can cut you off and say no Bryn because of the contamination?
No, it's not to the level that it's just honestly, it's just from what the tests that we have so far, it's just above the level. So honestly, this fill, if we had a site to go, if we were just capping this or something, or if we were bringing it to a different site and we are going to put an asphalt parking lot or something on it, you could actually leave it in place because it's not that high as of contamination. It just can't go to a general fill site that's not going to have something like that. So, and obviously, you know, most of these clean fill sites aren't going to want our product no matter what. You know, so again, it's not to that, they won't shut us down on that end of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Alderman Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. Kip, if this is mitigating from another site, who determines that? Is it the environmental assessment or is it the DNR?
I'm thinking it's the DNR eventually. I've never gone through this before. And again, the big reason is we could sit here and, you know, and investigate and do everything, and then honestly, this project dies. So that's why we're coming to you guys saying, hey, if you guys can chip in half, and we'll chip in half. Let's get this thing rocking and rolling. Let's get this thing done. And then, you know, if in the future we can go and find out, you know, do more investigation, maybe that's the DNR. I'm guessing they won't stop until they figure out maybe where this is coming from. That they'll do that. But in our case, you know, we're just trying to get this building up and getting people in there and getting our downtown rocking.
Okay, well, I'm glad it's not as severe as we thought it was.
Yeah.
To stop the project, and hopefully we can move forward. Thank you.
Alderman Soda.
This could be for Corey, Adam, or Kip, and that is, Kip, when you were talking about they're going to monitor it, are we putting in these monitoring wells that we keep paying certain companies every month for years to monitor it? Because if that's the case, I'm a little disappointed. Then I think this is just about money again, and it's environmental. We had sites like this in the city, and they kept billing us and billing us. They billed us for 3 years until I complained about it. And then the following month, they closed on it. So, I mean,
I have not heard that.
Someone's got to answer my question.
On that part of it, I mean, that would honestly, with us being the property owners, I'm guessing that would be coming back to us. But I have not, they have not made me aware that there'd be ongoing. It was just something like, you know, in 5 years, if they go out and test it and the level has gone up, the main thing is they just want to see if it's still getting polluted, I guess is what I was told.
Yeah,
I don't think it's like an ongoing monitoring, like a monthly thing.
Okay. I don't know, does Corey or Adam have an opinion on that? We had, for instance, where the Jimmy John's is, that was being monitored. Also in the parking lot over at the postal office for years. And it just bothered me that every time I'd see this bill from accounts payable and payroll, and finally I said, how long does this have to go on? And then, like I said, month later, and I'm sure James remembers this, all of a sudden they cleared it. And I just think a lot of times this is about money. It's about environmental businesses like this that just keep tapping in on these to earn money. I mean, give me a break. Foundry sand. I mean, come on. I mean, when did that become, I know it's a low level contaminant, but I mean, what's next? It becomes frustrating for me. I've been around the block too long and I see these things just progressing all the time. So I don't know if Corey, I see your light on, you've got an opinion.
Yep. Thank you, Alderman Sevnik. I'm not that familiar with what their intent is. Like Kip had said, they will be the owner. Do I foresee potentially a monitoring well at some point? Like Kip had mentioned, they're going to want to know if this is getting worse. If it's getting worse, that means there's a source that's polluting it or doing it. If it stays the same, then it goes away. I would envision there's going to be some monitoring. To what extent, I can't tell you. I don't know.
And like, how was it discovered? Because I'm sure they looked over a 100 yards over and they noticed a business over there that kind of did this kind of work, and then all of a sudden it becomes an issue. I just really have issues with all this. Is that how that happened, or how did this come about? Because you obviously, I mean, Alderman Langdon brought it up before. Obviously there was some environmental research done, and of course this is the groundwater part of it, but how did this come about, that it came in late like this later on after the foundry sand issue?
Kip, did you want to take that one?
Sure. So the big thing is honestly, the phase 1 and phase 2 did take longer than I would have expected. So I don't know if it wasn't so much because of what they had. I think it was because they were busy. The delay in what we found. So I think once you do these tests in the phase 2, because of the fact they're from the history or whatever, they had to take some soil tests, and what was found there. Foundry sand was easy for them to find because it's in the soil boring. They could see it. The water was the problem, is because they had to wait for the water to come into the soil. And these soil borings are only like 2 inches round, diameter, excuse me. And for the water in some of these clays, it takes a while for that water to actually get in there where they can actually take a sample. And then once they took that sample of that water, I think this is part of their process. When they're doing, when there is stuff possibly there, when they did that the foundry sand stuff, because of that, it kind of triggers all the tests that they have to do.
Okay. All righty. I see Alderman Nichols has a question.
Go ahead, Alderman Nichols.
Thank you. This question is for Deputy Director Gordon, and in Director Schrader's memo, it briefly touches on the stormwater detention facility, and that the city would be waiting to get the results of the additional investigation. So my question is, what are the ways in which this could impact the final design and cost of that part of the project?
Cost-wise, it's going to affect it depending on what we end up having to potentially haul away. I'm still favorable that we're going to install this system there. But if it gets to the point where it becomes too costly, we have options to make it smaller. We have options to, worst case scenario, completely void doing it in this location. That's not something I want to do, but we have some options. It's a regional pond. It's not specific to this property, the Bryn. It's treating roughly 19-20 acres of the city. And it is a good location because we get a lot of removal from this system in this area. So until we know exactly I think we're laying in a little bit bigger footprint than in a deeper footprint than what KIP and the building are. So it's going to fluctuate to a certain extent.
Okay, well, it's good to know that we can be anticipating some possible changes and at least some impact to that based on what we know today.
Right now, we're continuing as planned, but as things develop, we'll look at them and go from there.
Thank you. And my next question may be for Director Schrader. Are there or is there potential to apply to the DNR for environmental cleanup funds after this gets started to recoup some of that cost?
So it's my understanding that the Wisconsin DNR has kind of tapped out of all their brownfield grants and resources. In addition, from a grant standpoint, both with the state, federal, the application would have to be submitted, accepted, and likely approved before costs were done. As Corey had mentioned, that's something that we are going to be looking into. From a city standpoint, again, we are not anticipating coming in to do this project until December. So we have a little bit extra time. Kip is coming here today and saying, okay, I got to come up with the worst case scenario, and then figure out investigation and come down from there. So what we're looking at doing is, okay, let's, instead of us jump to that conclusion, let's get all the data in because we have the time to do it. Figure out where those point locations are, what needs to be specifically hauled here versus hauled here, and then move forward in that fashion. You know, like Corey had stated, you know, we can look at our worst case numbers, you know, and do that, but we can also fluctuate design as well. You know, the building itself requires a lot of architectural, a lot of state approvals. While our stormwater design does require a lot of work, it's pretty fixed. It's just modifying the actual pipe size or the amount of pipe basically just reduces our amount of quantity that we're taking out, and then we need to come up with that later, potentially somewhere else. So there's also additional design elements. You know, maybe it's a different type of fill material, so we don't have to fill, you know, 3 feet above the pipes. Maybe we can take a foot off and fill it with some other type of material, so we have to dig a foot less. So there's a lot of those conversations that we have the capability of looking into over these next several months, as well as looking into possibly some grant dollars for the stormwater aspect, because again, we're not going to be going out and doing that project till December. So there are some potentials there, and we are doing research on that.
Okay, and as far as recovering any funds spent on removing soils for the Bryn proper for that project, is there any ability to recoup some of those through grant funding?
It would not be through grant funding, because again, the grant funding would have to come first. But there is the possibility, if there is a responsible party that is still a present party that is investigated, that they are the causer of the environmental conditions. Again, there were 3 environmental sites, you know, kind of close to this. So again, I think there was a historic gas station just to the north. You know, so there's other things there as well that potentially could recoup some costs. But we really need to get through the next month or so with that additional investigation to pin that down, and then to figure out a strategy on how to move forward.
But the investigation shouldn't hold up the project, I think is what I'm hearing.
That's basically, you know, would it have been more ideal to, you know, do this 2 months ago and have the investigation completely fully done? Yes. But at this time, the DNR we have had conversations with the DNR. I believe Kip, his group, and his consultant will be having more conversations with the DNR this week. They have kind of filed with them. So they are working on that plan of, okay, how do we move forward? Ultimately, when you develop a site, the DNR, ultimately that is the best way to get closure on a site is through the development of a site. So again, their ultimate goal is to work with the developers and work with the city to make this happen, because once that site gets developed, it's at a known state and it has closure. So again, that's one less property that the DNR has to worry about for years to come. So again, they do love to work with developers and the municipalities to make these closures happen.
Thank you. And my last question is for Director Sassman. This was briefly touched upon in the first presentation, but could you address the financial part of this, that the 200,000 that the city is potentially committing to the cleanup of the soil can be absorbed by the TIF and still have some money remaining?
I sure can. TID 10 can support this additional cost, even without the additional increment from the project. TID 10 is projected to close about $470,000 with a positive fund balance.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Alderman Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. Corey, not to put you on the spot, you may look into this. If there be a significant savings, maybe the city of Menasha could haul out to Hilbert the contaminated ground. So just a thought there. And then also, Sam, there was where the fountain is on the corner of Kakana and Taco in Maine, there was a gas station on that corner. And then across from Jitters, there was a gas station there. And then next to Jitters to the east, there was a car franchise dealership there too. So there's probably three underground tanks that were in that area at one time. So just thought I'd give you an update on that. Thank you.
Alderman Soda.
This might be a silly question, but is there a way to date the contaminants, the solvents? And the reason I ask that is I find this interesting that this happened, and is there any possibility that it could have been intentional by a party? And the reason I bring that up is that we had that issue in the city already with our well at Hart Park. Someone purposely contaminated it, and we had to shut it down. So just wondering, is there a way of dating this material, realizing that maybe it was old material that from years past, or could it be determined if someone did it intentionally to put it into the groundwater to, I mean, I'm sorry, I might be going over our head, but I like to look at all parameters.
So it's not necessarily, like if you were taking in Antarctica, an ice core sample, and they go back and they say, okay, it was this date. But certain chemicals were used historically in certain time periods. So they will, as they kind of get additional materials, as they get additional testing, they'll determine the spread, how it's located within, where the groundwater has come through, and they will start to paint that picture of where the most probable location came from.
Good. Yes. So my question wasn't really all that ridiculous. All right.
No,
thank you.
That is part of this, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Well, and the other thing, as far as where this is located, it's really located on kind of the south side of everybody, and that's because that's the lowest side, and that seawall that is holding the wall, the channel there is actually a dam and not allowing that groundwater to go anywhere. So that's why it could be here it could have been here for a long time. But I'm guessing through this investigation, they'll be able to possibly trace where that's come from with more borings and whatnot if that's how this goes forward.
Anybody else? So we have a development agreement amendment on the floor, I guess in the packet. We could take action on that. We could adjourn into closed session if anyone has any issues that would need to be negotiated. Alderman Stefanik?
I think I got all my questions answered, and I feel good about the agreement. It's still our property. I like that we're still partners. I'm hoping this is the worst case scenario. Maybe it could come in at 80,000 or something, and then it's only $40,000 or something. So
replace that.
I want to get this project moving forward. So there is a motion, a recommended motion. If I read that, would that be in order?
Yes.
All right. So I'll move that the Common Council approve the Fourth Amendment to the Land Purchase and Development Agreement with the Bryn LLC for the redevelopment of the Bryn project as presented, and upon review of financial commitments to close on the sale of the properties.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Becky, did you have other questions?
I have one more. When can we anticipate the close and the transfer to take place?
I believe they said Thursday, right?
Yeah, tomorrow at 1:30.
So you mentioned that was for
Oh, yeah.
7 Taco and 13 Main.
Correct.
But
Well,
then
that's
that,
actually for all of it. It's for all of it.
Okay.
My bad. Yeah, it's for, sorry.
right.
Yeah, it's for
So
all the properties.
tomorrow afternoon.
Correct.
Thank you.
And yeah, so just to clarify that too, as Alderman Stefanik had kind of noted, the financial commitments to closing, per the development agreement, the city has to review those documents to ensure, we have commitments in hand and how we're moving forward. So again, the bank as well as the PACE financing, we have seen the cash. So the commitments are there. They haven't closed. They still have certain conditions, but they are committed to the project and fully in support. The last thing that we're looking at, and Jennifer can maybe chime in, is just to make sure we're kind of reviewing how that last bit of $200,000 is going to be absorbed, because again, we want to make sure that the overall project can finance itself. And again, that would fall upon Director Sassman. So I'm not sure, Jennifer, did you have anything to add to that? Otherwise, again, I think that will be under review.
I don't have anything further to add. No, I will be reviewing that. But my belief is still that they have demonstrated the financial commitments to sufficiently fund the project. But we will look at that this afternoon yet.
Are you still planning any type of ceremony in the
Yes.
future? Yep. Yeah. Okay.
So we're gonna if depending how everything goes here, I'll be sending that out yet tonight. We're looking at next week Wednesday at 1:30 on site to do a groundbreaking. So we'll be posting that in the papers and Facebook and city and everything.
I don't see any other questions. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Taylor,
Aye.
Alderman Stefanik,
Aye.
Alderman Langdon,
Aye.
Alderman Schmidt,
Aye.
Alderman Tom Gardy,
Aye.
Alderman Ted Gardy,
Aye.
Alderman Rapella,
Aye.
Alderman Nichols.
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0.
Mayor, would you like a motion to adjourn?
Sure, I was just making sure there wasn't a second item. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Light
Thanks,
committee
everybody.
meeting tonight, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Be there, be square.